All right, let's talk about a really powerful and honestly kind of beautiful way of thinking about education. It's an idea that goes way beyond just, programming brains or filling up empty jars with facts. We're going to dive into what's called the pedagogy of emanation.
So let's just jump right in with a huge question. For a long time now, education has kind of worked on this computer model, right? The mind is the hardware, and knowledge is the software we're supposed to install. But what if that's the wrong metaphor entirely? What if the mind isn't a machine we have to build, but more like a light source that's already there, just waiting to be uncovered so it can shine?
And that's where this idea, a pedagogy of emanation, comes in. It really pushes back against our modern, kind of mechanical view of learning. It says that education isn't about cramming facts into somebody. It's actually a process of unfolding who we are at our very core. That's the ontological part. It's all about reconnecting with the abilities we already have for perception, for understanding, and even for seeing what's right and wrong. It's less about building something new and more about revealing what's already there.
To really get a handle on this, we're going to use a single powerful metaphor for this whole explainer: the idea of learning as a form of light. We're going to look at its source, the lens that helps us focus it, the spectrum of what it reveals, and finally the playground where it all comes to life. First up, let's go to the source of this light. And this idea has some seriously deep roots in ancient philosophy, especially Neoplatonism, which gives us this just stunning vision of reality, not as a bunch of separate, static objects, but as one dynamic, generous, and continuous flow.
So, the philosopher Plotinus had this totally fascinating way of seeing reality. He saw everything emanating, or sort of flowing outwards from this single perfect source he called the One. You can think of it like light radiating out from the sun. First, you get the intellect, the world of pure ideas. From that flows the world soul, the thing that animates everything. And finally, you get the material world that we see and touch. The key takeaway here is that everything is a continuous expression of that one original source.
And this quote just nails it, right? At the heart of emanation is this idea that, unlike a builder who makes something separate from themselves, this source just overflows. It's so abundant that it can't help but flow outwards. It gives rise to all of existence without ever losing any of itself. So, in this worldview, reality is fundamentally generous and interconnected. Our own consciousness, your mind, is part of this whole flow.
Okay, so if reality is this source of light, how do we actually perceive it? Well, for that, you need a lens. And this is where a field of thought called phenomenology comes in, which says that lens is our own embodied mind.
You know, the old school way of thinking saw perception as a one-way street. The world sends us data, sights, sounds, feelings, and our mind just passively soaks it up, like a camera sensor. But philosophers like Merleau-Ponty totally flipped that on its head. They argued that our body isn't just a taxi for the brain, it's an active partner in how we make sense of everything. Meaning doesn't just arrive fully formed. It emerges from this living relationship between our body and the world around us. We don't just receive the world, we co-create our experience of it.
So we have the light and the lens. What does this light show us when it passes through our embodied perception? Well, it reveals a spectrum. And this spectrum isn't just made of colors, it's a world of objective, ethical value.
Now get ready, because this is a really mind-bending idea from the philosopher Max Scheler. He argued that values, things like justice or courage or dignity, aren't just our personal opinions. He said they're real objective qualities out there in the world that we can perceive, almost like how we perceive color. He believed we have this kind of emotional intuition that lets us directly sense this hierarchy of values, where we just know that spiritual values are higher than, say, values of just being useful.
So you can see how this totally changes the game for ethics, right? Instead of morality being all about memorizing and following a list of abstract rules, it becomes about developing our ability to see what's truly valuable in any situation. The moral genius isn't someone who just follows the rules perfectly. It's someone whose perception is so sharp that they can immediately sense the highest good in a situation and act on it.
Okay, so we've got a reality that flows, an embodied mind that perceives it, and a world of objective values to be seen. Where does this all actually come together? Well, it happens in the playground of human culture, and especially in the act of play.
The historian Johann Huizinga had this amazing insight. We tend to think of play as something silly, not serious. But he argued that play is actually one of the most fundamental and serious things we do as a culture. It's inside the magic circle of a game where we create rules, we test out values, and we generate meaning with incredible focus.
And it's wild to see how these ancient ideas are alive and well today. Huizinga's agonal spirit, that intense drive to compete, is everywhere in modern video games. Get this, in a huge tournament for the game Imperium 3, over 30,000 players didn't just play, they built complex social strategies, they formed alliances, they even organized boycotts. They were deeply, profoundly serious about the world inside that game, proving that play is this powerful arena where strategy, society, and meaning just emerge.
So when you put all these pieces together, the flowing source, the perceptive lens, the spectrum of value, you end up with this profound shift in how we think about learning. It's no longer about acquiring stuff from the outside. Learning is not acquisition, it is alignment. It's about aligning our own perception with the deeper realities that are already there, just waiting for us to see them.
So, we'll end by turning this all back to you. The pedagogy of emanation is really suggesting that the ability for deep understanding, for creativity, for moral insight, it's not something you have to build from scratch. It's already inside you. So the real question is, in your own life and in your own learning, what are you doing to clear away the dust and let that light shine through?